Coming up next, we have Daniel. Daniel is a product manager at Google working on contactless payments, helping people around the world access the security and convenience of paying with their phone or smartwatch. I don't know, raise of hand, who pays with their phone or watch today? I just want to understand here. All right. I even travel with my phone now only, and surprised when I can't use my phone. So let's bring Daniel up to the stage.
Thanks very much, Jose. Were there a lot of people who were paying with their mobile before? I didn't see the raise of hands. Should I be happy or should I go back and take that as feedback? Don't tell me later. So thank you for having me. Before I get into it, my name is Daniel. I'm a product manager at Google, and it's super nice to be here with you here in Budapest. We've had a lovely time, my wife and I, traveling here already. And the first two talks, I feel like I've got big shoes to fill, but I've already been scribbling a bunch of notes, so I've had a great time so far. So, look, have you had this same experience as I have of occasionally standing in the bathroom in the morning, looking at yourself in the mirror and thinking, have I made a terrible, terrible mistake? Anyone ever stand in the bathroom thinking that to themselves? Apparently you're doing better than I am. I have this moment occasionally, and unfortunately it's often in the context of my professional life. I sort of think, am I in the right job? Am I in the right company? And it's the same thing, if you look back at my diary over the last 5 years, as I did recently in preparation for this talk, you'll see phrases coming up like, look, I'm frustrated, or I feel like I'm in this constant battle, or I'm working hard, not getting anywhere, this kind of Sisyphean kind of feeling, or, maybe it's just not the right job for me. And I don't know if anyone resonates with this, but I talk to people out in my companies, I talk to people out in the wild, and it seems to be that I'm not alone, at least. So hopefully there are some in the audience as well. But this is weird though, right? I'm a product manager, and I made it here through having sort of staggered my way through a bunch of jobs. I was a newspaper delivery boy, I was a McDonald's manager for many years, I was a central bank economist, I was an escape room founder, and then eventually I found my way to product management. But it was after sort of a series of having sort of triangulated what's important to me in a job, what do I like, what am I best fit for? And so it was strange to me, okay, product management works, and yet I still see these themes coming through my diary of feeling frustrated and feeling like it's not quite working for me. But what I realized at some point thinking about it was that actually product management seems like and wants you to think that it's one job. It's not really. It's actually a bunch of jobs in a trench coat. And it's like, there's like heaps of them under there, and they all say product management on the label, but really, they're very different under the surface. And when I realized this, I suddenly figured, aha, it's not that product management isn't a good fit for me, it's that I'm a fish trying to ride a bicycle. Like, I'm trying to do something at this company that's not what the company needs from its type of product managers. Just by the way, with this quote, you've probably seen it before, right? If you only take one thing from this talk, it's that it probably wasn't Albert Einstein. There is very little good evidence to suggest that he said this. Great quote, probably not attributable to him. And so this was the revelation moment. I suddenly figured, okay, I can be a product manager. I like this. This is the right profession for me. But what I need to do at a particular company is going to vary quite a lot by where that company is and exactly what it's trying to do. And so that's the wisdom, such as it is, that I'm here to share with you today. My typology of the different stages of company and what those companies are trying to do, and hence what, as a product manager, you need to do to be successful. So, in the spirit of executive summary at the start of the document, and in the spirit of people tend to wane in their attention over time, here's my whole talk. One slide, here it is. So my typology is 4 stages of the company. Feel free to argue with me about this at lunch. I know you can cut this a whole lot of different ways. But the way that I thought about it when I was thinking about all of the companies that I've worked at, and before Google, I've worked at 4 or 5 different companies as a PM, and they're at very different stages. And it seemed like if I sort of drew the lines between them, this is where they fell out. And so if you think about it, okay, first of all, first type of company is a founding stage company. So it's the classic in a garage startup. And the job of this company, it needs to get product market fit. And so that's what your role is as a product manager. You need to get product market fit, help the founders get product market fit. You might be a founder, or if you're not, you are their conduit to the product. That's it, full stop. And then if you're lucky enough to make it to the growing phase, you've got some traction, then as a company, you're trying to get as big as possible, as quickly as possible. And as a product manager in that phase, you need to fuel that growth fire, get stuff out of the way, and make sure that that user growth is continuing as quickly as possible. Then you've grown, like you might have done things that Gadi suggested and delighted users to help grow. And you're reaching the professionalizing stage. You're eyeing an exit, and the company needs to sort of prove that it's an adult. So as a product manager in this stage, you're trying to help clean up those messes and help make sure that that product is sustainable, makes more money than it burns, and you don't have these dependencies on individuals. That's kind of your job. And then lastly, you're in the optimizing stage. You've had an exit, and then you need to just keep churning, keep innovating, but not threatening that core success that the company's had. So as a PM, that's your job. You're mitigating risk while continuing to improve and finding safe ways to continue innovating. So that was the lightning version of the talk. Now we're going to go through at a bit of a slower pace and talk through each stage. So the founding stage. And you'll know you're in the founding stage. It's fairly obvious because, I mean, number one, no one cares about you. You tell your parents, I work at company XYZ, and they look at you, they've never heard of you before. Same with your friends. You're also not making any money, and all you have is a dream and hope. So the company's job is to find that product market fit straight away, or as quickly as possible, because the trouble is, this is Schrodinger's cat. This is not you. The cat is dead. As a founding stage company, Paul Graham has a great blog post where his phrase is default dead. As a founding stage company, if you don't do anything different, you're dead. You run out of funding, you run out of runway, you're gone. So that's the company's job, and that's your job as a product manager. Extend that runway by figuring out what do customers want and how do you sell it to them. That's another way of putting product market fit, essentially. And so what sort of PMs, what sort of people thrive in this environment? Who is it that is a good product manager here? Well, so from my experience, what you need is this extreme tolerance for chaos, because there is nothing. You are swimming in the primordial ooze. There's nothing there that you haven't probably created yourself, whether it be a product or a process. This pragmatism is also required. You are pulling things together, or no one else is. And it helps a lot if you are super empathetic with your users. I think Wise is an excellent example of this, but as a founding stage company, if you don't know your users almost better than they do themselves, you're going to be in trouble. Also, it helps a whole lot to be stingy, because again, you're default dead. If you're someone who is eyeing off that nice standing desk that plays the national anthem when it reaches a certain size, spending that sort of money is definitely going to make you dead quicker than it would otherwise. This is my slide on each of these, the company stages that's the most important one. This is why I think, in hindsight, I had those moments where I looked back and said, why was I so frustrated at these companies? Because certain goals at each company stage are non-goals at different company stages. Let me say that a different way. Something that looks like a good thing to do at company X that is in a certain stage will actually be the complete opposite of what you need to be doing elsewhere. So in the founding stage, what you are definitely not wanting to do is implementing robust processes. And I saw this. I joined a founding stage company, and the founders had hired a very senior engineer coming from a different company. He looked great on paper. But the first thing he did when he came into the company was set up a Jira instance, start getting us to have these Scrum ceremonies, all this sort of thing, set up regular cadence sort of strategy meetings every quarter. And all of this would be great if there were a product, and if we were making money, and if, I don't know, anyone was talking about the company. In reality, what we needed to be doing was shipping daily, looking for that product market fit. So those robust processes, number one, it's not what he should be spending time on, but even worse, it's actually harming our ability. It was harming our ability in that founding stage company to do what we needed to do. So robust processes, anti-goal in this stage. Similarly, grand plan, anything that has a time horizon on it for longer than about 3 months out, scrap that document, go back to the drawing board, get back to work. And this is where I say I'm speaking for myself, not for my company here. Too much concern about legal or compliance issues at the founding stage Legal and compliance issues are a luxury. Like, you get legal and compliance issues once you've got something to lose. At this point, you'll die from loneliness, not die from someone attacking you. So don't be too scared about legal and compliance issues. Run at product market fit. That's my advice. Come up and argue with me over lunch. That's my disclaimer for all of this. And again, quick slide here. Take a photo or else approach me afterwards. I'm happy to send you these slides. Here's some resources I thought are excellent for learning about being a product manager in this stage. The 4 Steps to the Epiphany is a great book about B2B product management. I saw a question about that earlier. 0 to 1, obviously, and Paul Graham's blog is surprisingly amazing for many topics, including this. So now you've made it out of the founding stage, congratulations, or you've joined a company that is out of the founding stage, and you're in the growing stage. And this is kind of the stage that is that classical startup stage. If you think of a startup, you think of companies aggressively growing, just going after more users, more markets at whatever cost they can. And this is pretty much the company's goal. So if you take a look at this lovely photo, I'm not sure how the contrast is. Oh, it's all right. You might see beautiful nature scene, right? Lovely forest. I see that. But I also see an aggressive fight for survival. Each of these plants is going to survive or not at the expense of some other plant in that ecosystem. It's grow or die at this point. And that's the company that you've joined. You either need to find that user growth, climb that hockey stick curve, or you'll be in trouble. So, as a product manager, your main task then is to help the company grow. Like, that's it. If you're not chasing growth, then you better have a really good reason why you're not contributing to that growth, because really, that's the fundamental threat to the company's existence at this point, not growing fast enough. And yeah, the ways to do that, you can either be finding more customers directly, kind of that growth PM work, removing leaks in the funnel, that's that kind of conversion work, or potentially, and this is a risky one, looking for the next big source of growth to exploit. That one's risky because chasing shiny things can be a very damaging PM disease. So as a PM in this phase, the skills and traits that I see you as needing is that monomania about growth is particularly helpful. Like being obsessed with it, being completely driven by, are this week's numbers larger than last week's numbers? Almost to the extent where I'd say, rather than a product manager, you should think of yourself almost as a growth hacker in some cases. And similarly, kind of the yin-yang of that is being paranoid about what could stop growth. Like looking constantly around the corner to say, hey, what's going to be a handbrake? Where are we going to lose users? How are we churning users? In that kind of vein, being familiar with marketing is super helpful in this phase because you're growing. The best way to grow is marketing. And so having that conversant relationship with marketing and being very close to that coalface serves you extremely well. The most successful product managers I've seen at companies in this phase were ones who either maybe came out of marketing or got extremely close to the marketing colleagues that we had. Data analysis helps because an experimental scientific mindset is super useful, and being quick learning because if you're growing 10% week on week, the world is changing very fast. And so if you don't keep up, if you're not constantly reinventing yourself, as we sort of heard from the first talk this morning, you're going to get left behind. Now on my anti-patterns, again, we've got this kind of sense of if you're someone who likes building processes, this may be a challenging role for you because building processes for their own sake is not necessarily a great goal. If those processes unlock growth, however, then there's a place for them. So if your onboarding funnel requires 3 people to manually hand off a user one to another and it takes them 2 days to do so, and you say, okay, stop, we're going to replace this with a really clear process where one person takes 2 hours, okay, that's great. That's a process that suddenly 10x's your growth funnel. But process just to make sure things get done right may not be the most helpful thing. And once again, chasing compliance versus being fully within the bounds of what's acceptable may not be a full goal. There's a bit of a risk here though. You need to be aware of what might come down the pipe. So a company that I worked at had deprioritized this. Being fully compliant was something that they were going to tackle later on. It was tomorrow Daniel's problem, as it were. However, at some point, the regulator got a little bit shirty about this and said, okay, right, you've deprioritized this for so long, we're going to come in and put a handbrake on your growth until you sort it out. So although there is the idea of doing things the completely right way is not a goal in and of itself, being paranoid about what effects that might have down the stream is an important goal. And then resources for learning here. The High Growth Handbook is a new book a couple of years ago, I think, that's super useful there. Or Reforge runs some excellent courses in this space, specifically for product managers, but also they've got other disciplines too. So now, you've made it out of the growth phase, and people know about you, people care about you. You're starting to talk about an exit as a company. You want to go, essentially, from Silicon Valley to Wall Street. You want to sell your company to public investors or be acquired by someone. And the goal here for the company is to, like I said on the previous slide, clean up those messes. Like all of the anti-goals that I was talking about for the previous two slides, essentially those are laying yourself nice piles of garbage to clean up at some point. Welcome, we're there. So as a product manager, that's your job. You're helping the company make its way towards an exit. You're helping improve the sustainability of the company and the product. And what that means when you boil down to it is your product creating more value than it burns? If it's not, really, it doesn't have any place in a company that's gone public unless there's some other value. And you note that I say value here rather than revenue. There are some products, internal products, for example. You're building tooling. You're not making any money, but the value you provide to the company, so long as it costs less to keep your team running, keep those services running, than the value in terms of, say, developer velocity or something like that, that's a good product. If you can't plausibly claim that your product does create more value than it costs, this is the stage where you might start to have some awkward conversations. So which product managers or which people thrive in this phase? Able to think about costs and benefits, and this is where I preach my background. Coming from economics helps a lot here because you were trained to think about, is this worth the cost? This is where the process-minded product managers suddenly thrive. Suddenly it becomes important to have a process that reliably produces value and that reliably evaluates opportunities in terms of whether they're going to pay off sufficiently in the long run to make them worth the upfront investment. Collaboration and cross-disciplinary awareness, you're suddenly in a company that you're not just hacking it together as you go. There is a legal department, there's a compliance department, there's a security department, and all of them have very valid points and want a seat at the table. So being able to collaborate with them and understand what they are trying to communicate to you and what sort of value they're providing to the company becomes very important. And if you can do that naturally, you will have a much nicer time at this phase. And then managing upwards. Suddenly you're probably 4 layers away from the CPO or the CEO, and so your work is not necessarily going to stand on its own merits anymore. So the ability to say, hey, my team's doing great things, here's why we exist, here's why we're more valuable than we cost, and do that in a structured way. If you can't do that, this is one of the areas I've seen product managers get frustrated. They came from a much smaller company where they were great, the CEO knew them by name, and so they just were able to do good work, and that was enough. Now they're at a company where that's not enough, and they need to internally market themselves, and suddenly they find this frustrating, and they feel like they are running in place or just not being recognized. Here's one of the skills: upwards management and just internal marketing are pretty critical skills here. Anti-patterns. This is the awkward point, because this is the transition from, in the previous phase, the growing phase, running after growth at any cost was a great thing. You wanted to do this. Suddenly, we've switched over. Unsustainable growth isn't the goal anymore. If you can't grow in a way that will make more money than it burns eventually, this is not a good thing. This is not something you can sell to the street. Similarly, high risk, high reward moves, there might be some space for it in an overall product portfolio, but chasing those exclusively, high risk is not a nice topic for companies that have had an exit, because they mean that the variance of your outcomes increase enormously. Much better to have a company that smoothly grows over time rather than grows 50% one year and then suddenly shrinks the next year. And similarly, pursuing new moonshots. When you're in this professionalizing phase, you're eyeing an exit. The company wants to reassure everyone that they know what they're doing, the product is good, they can make money off it. Suddenly lurching in a new direction, there might be some space for it, but pursuing them per se may not be the top goal for the company. And so if that's something you want to do as a product manager, you may have an awkward time at these types of companies. And then if you want to learn about product management work at this stage, this is where the classic product management tomes, the Bibles of being a product manager, come in. And I have to say, I think this is why I was frustrated a lot of the time. I read these books, and they're amazing books, inspired by Marty Kagan. Anyone read that or heard of that? Yeah. And then Escaping the Build Trap, that was one recommended by my former CPO. I read it and I thought, okay, this is how to do product management. But I was in a much earlier stage company, and so I was trying to build these very, very robust, very, very product-led kind of frameworks, and getting pushback that I was wasting my time. This is the time. When you're professionalizing a company, that's when they need you to start thinking like a grown-up product manager and using these sort of frameworks. So lastly, congratulations. You're now working at a big tech company. You've had an exit. This is me, by the way. This is Google. And now you're optimizing. You've got a base of revenue. You've got a product that works really well, that users are using, that's growing steadily. And the company wants to continue innovating, but not threaten that nice, successful thing that it's got already. And so this is where the problem that you sometimes see here is that the poor old unicorns who loved being part of the growing phase and who tolerated the professionalizing phase suddenly feel like they've been forced into a suit and forced to answer phone calls all day. This is where I see a lot of the time. I've experienced this with friends. Product managers who were fantastic growth product managers slowly felt their soul seeping away because they want to run after this crazy growth. They want to go and put something wild in the product to see if you tap 3 times, then like John Cena comes through the roof and high fives you or something. There's not that much space for it at an optimizing company because an optimizing company doesn't want to run these enormous risks, and an optimizing company doesn't need to chase growth at all costs. And so this is kind of where you can end up if you're not cognizant of the fact that the PM role has changed underneath you, and it might be time to look for a company that's better suited to your skills. So as a PM at this sort of company, you're looking for safe ways to innovate. And I really emphasize that word safe because the trouble here is you've got something that works. This is producing money over here. You don't want to screw that up. And we still want to innovate, but the bigger thing is you don't want to screw that up. And so, again, pursuing really high-risk things, you're going to get a lot of pushback, even if you say, but it could be 200% growth. People will only see the risk to what is working and what is keeping the company running. So incremental improvements, because even if you only get a 2% improvement, if you're making $1 billion a year, that's still a lot of money. So those incremental improvements when you're at the optimizing phase really add up, and that's your job as a PM. So people who thrive in this phase, again, it's that upwards management, that collaboration, that communication. You've got a lot of people around you at this point. Your company's probably thousands of people. And so if you're able to put out those tendrils and play well with others, you'll go quite well. And again, it's the risk management of, should I be doing this? Like, is this going to potentially, in the bad scenario, cost more than it's worth in the good scenario? That's the sort of analysis you're constantly doing. Being good at politics. People think politics is a dirty word in companies, but really politics is how humans get things done at scale. Politics just means playing with other people in a game where you might have not perfectly overlapping interests. Getting good at this at an optimizing level company is going to help you and your team thrive. And again, doing things at scale and then understanding that you are part of a much bigger system. If you have these sort of skills, if this is something that you naturally like doing, you're going to enjoy working in an optimizing phase company. And again, the most important slide here, like the non-goals. If you're a product manager who longs for the days of the founding stage of the growth phase where you could pivot on a dime, every day chase something new, you're going to potentially have a bad time here. Jumping on every possible opportunity is no longer your goal. Stability, intelligent choice of priorities, and then patiently executing on them. This is the goal instead. And again, similarly, growth at any cost, not your goal. And narrow optimization. I was saying before, that systems thinking. The opposite of that is the narrow optimization. You can no longer just focus your attention on the click-through rate of this one single button because there's a whole web of features, products, company out there that may be negatively affected by what you're doing. So if you prefer to just have a very narrow focus, this may be a hard company phase for you as a product manager. And if you want to learn about product management work here, I really love this book, although you can use it as a blunt weapon. It's like that thick. The product manager's desk reference, it's not one that you're going to take with you around the place. They are serious about the desk part of that, but it really covers product management from like go to woe. Seven Powers is an amazing book on business strategy. At this point, starting to think more about how is the strategy, how are we creating a competitive advantage for my product is helpful. And I mean, at this point, like at the optimizing stage, managing yourself and your time is quite important. So that Seven Habits of Highly Effective People, classic tome, pretty helpful for PMs. So you've had the luxury of the first two talks where you could sit and then send out questions through the Slido. Unfortunately, I'm one of those people who then require you to do something and expose yourselves a little bit. So what I'd like you to do, talk to your neighbor, turn around. If you've met them before, I guess you get a free pass, but if you're sitting next to someone you haven't met, talk to them instead. Quickly introduce yourself for me. Who are you? Where do you work? What's your favorite donut? And then tell them about this sort of stuff, like what stage is your company at, in your opinion, and what does that mean for your work? And then based on what you've seen here, or based on what you think yourself, what stage of company do you think you might be best suited to? And what are you going to do about it, basically? So take 5 minutes, talk to your neighbor, exchange, and then we'll hear from some people in the crowd if I can get a roving mic. So go, talk, I'll call you back in 5.
So while hearing your stuff, have you ever run into Ravi Mehta's The Shape of a PM?
Oh, I haven't.
So he basically maps out like the skills of a PM, and then there's like different shapes between like if you're like a technical PM, a group PM, like both like career-wise.
Oh, cool.
And I was thinking like how do those shapes map out to this trajectory of like company? So I might actually delve into that, maybe shoot it over and see.
Yeah, let's do it. Yeah, let's chat.
Yeah.
It's a good, because I was thinking the same thing of like, there's a few ways to cut it. Like I think there's the shape, there's also like the discipline, it's like the technical PM versus like a growth PM or something.
Correct.
So that's an interesting one.
Yeah.
And also how does it evolve over time?
Yes.
Because the company, it's a sort of linear line through my things.
Correct.
But as a PM, you might kind of,
grow, in
it might
ways.
be a little, you're more of a mold. That's cool. You were engineer and you made your way into products, right?
That is correct.
Yeah, I was talking to Galgo before.
Ah, okay.
He gave me the inside scoop.
Yeah. That's how I ended up. I mean, I ran engineering teams as product teams.
Oh, cool.
And then this, at some point, my CPO was like, why don't you go into product?
Sorry, being shouted at.
Yeah.
Sorry. Another minute or so is probably about right. What time? All right. Okay. So to interrupt conversations, if you've met someone nice, make sure you chat to them at lunch, get their business card, or at least corner them in the lobby. I'd love to hear from you, though. You've just spoke to someone else. What I find is it's much easier to ask someone to introduce the poor patsy next to them than themselves. So if you've met someone interesting, Jose's going to come around with a microphone. Tell us about the person you met. Tell us about their company and what they thought about company stages. Anyone? My parents are teachers. I'm very good at picking people from a crowd. So if I don't get volunteers, don't worry, we'll find some. We haven't had many. The people at the back thought they were free. So Jose, go find a victim up the back in the stadium seating for me. I think go sort of 5 o'clock, like in the stadium seating. Yeah, the one's looking particularly nervous right now. Like, yeah.
Okay, I didn't think I will end up with a mic in my hand. Okay, so, well, we know each other.
Ah.
Yes, and that's why...
Who's this? Who is your friend?
My friend.
What's his name?
My name is TB. Hello.
Nice to meet you. Okay, tell us.
Now you have the problem.
No.
Okay. Okay, back to me. So that's why we were talking to this gentleman. And, well, actually, Tibi started to talk with him, so I need to admit that I didn't get your name, so I would like to hand it over to you.
I am Balázs. Hi.
Yeah. Sorry, Balázs. Okay, nice to meet you.
And did you get any insights about...
Yes, it was pretty interesting because I have an impression that we are in a very similar situation, that the job we are doing is pretty much in the phase of maintain. Maintain, optimize, although that we are both in a role that we are developing new things as well, but we need to focus on a certain aspect of the story, so maintain and make sure it's working and it's stable and everything is fine. And we both have some frustration because we would like to introduce new things, we would like to suggest new ideas, we would like to add more to it. That is our role. Actually, that is my take, and probably I'm talking a bit more about myself, but I heard that, I heard you saying pretty similar thing as well.
Interesting. So do you have an idea which phase of company you might be more comfortable in, do you think?
Oh, good question. Because actually, I do enjoy this role. Yeah.
And I mean, to those of you whose bosses are in the crowd, I'm not saying you're not saying you hate your current company. You're just exploring an idea. So feel free to blame me if this comes up. How about? Thank you, the gentleman with the handsome mustache here. Yeah. That's
A
you.
round of
Yeah,
applause, please, because
Yeah,
this is
thank
hard
you.
to do, and I appreciate you talking in front of a crowd. So thank you.
Yeah, you too. In the front here, in the middle row here, like amazing mustache. There we go.
All right.
Sorry, I've only got physical characteristics to go on.
Yeah, hi. Yeah, we actually know each other. So yeah.
Who's
but
your friend?
it's like he's Banin. He's working as a product designer at
cool.
Deutsche Telekom.
Nice.
So actually we are working on a product together. And yeah, we didn't have so much time to discuss things in the past, let's say 1.5 and 2 weeks. So we actually discussed what stage we are at with our current product.
And
so
which stage do you think? Are you which phase?
yeah, actually it's growing stage. So basically we are facing the similar thing that you shared, like releasing really early. So like we want to test an MVP, but that we're working on together with end customers very quickly and check if it fails or not. So basically, yeah, that's what we discussed, how we can plan it and what are the next steps, because we still have a tight deadline. Because the problem is, doing these rapid tests at a big company, sometimes it's kind of challenging. Yeah, so
And
also we need to do the politics part, because these things are not that familiar. Yeah.
Well, it's an interesting point. How do you find being in a growing product at a much bigger company? How's that tension?
Yeah, exactly. The problem is like they expect these detailed plans for the long run.
Yeah.
I'm working as like a service and product manager, so like I need to like make plans for like a longer run. But in the meantime, of course, there is like we are building these things based on lots of assumptions that we want to validate, and technically. That's also lots of teaching. So that's my pain point, like really explaining, look, that's an assumption, that's a hypothesis. We are testing a hypothesis. It might fail, and then we do course correction. But the problem is sometimes it's not well received. But that's where we all need to improve. But it's a typical problem, I would say, in many cases. So.
Thanks for sharing. Yeah, very interesting. You've got the dual problems of the growing phase and the optimizing phase.
Yeah, exactly.
So you're extra masochist. Well, thanks for sharing.
Cheers.
And then I think, Jose, we've got time for one more, I guess.
Yes, we do.
Yeah. Okay. Anyone in the in the
side
spirit
of the
of
room?
like equality,
Over there?
yeah.
Raising your hand?
Looks like you found someone. Yeah. Go ahead.
I want to go here.
Yeah.
Hello, my name is Norbert. Here next to me is Tamás, my colleague. We are working at the same big multinational company.
Nice.
On the same product, let's say, but in different teams. And what we discussed that, yes, the product that we're working on has a maturity, let's say. But independently from that, the different teams has also independent stage. For example, his team is mostly in growing stage. Their focus is different, for example, than my team's focus. We are at the border of growing and professionalism. We are looking for the processes and so on, as you showcased. So yeah, that's it.
And do you sort of feel that plays out in what's important to both of you in what you're doing day to day in your different teams?
Yeah, I would say.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, this is a good layer for my next iteration of this talk. It's not just about the company phase, it's also about the product phase. Would you say that your company is more at the sort of optimizing phase overall, like our previous example?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Big multinational, you were saying. Cool. Okay, well, thank you very much.
Thanks.
I appreciate you indulging me. That's most of why I do these talks, to make people squirm in the audience. So I appreciate it. So last calls to action, because you shouldn't end a meeting without some sort of clear action items, PM 101. So keep thinking about it. for me at least, this has paid big dividends in understanding myself and understanding where I'd best fit in the product management landscape. And since I started to triangulate this better, I've had fewer of those diary entries, put it that way. Choose the right problem. So this is one of those. I think the trap as a product manager is kind of, we think the solution is often kind of working harder, whereas I've really found that thinking about this and changing where you're applying that effort can help. And yeah, look, open invitation. Here's how you can find me. If you have questions or if you want to start a conversation about this, I'd be super happy to hear from you. But otherwise, thank you very much for listening to me, and I'll see you around lunch.